to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are breaking into the earth. And covering the first, technically 5 chapters, 1 through 5 of The Stone Sky, the third installment.
There's some sneaky chapters in there.
Earth. So. Yeah. I was figuring, I figured this one out by page number, because Hannah often does the breakdowns, and I was like, well, about 132 pages is halfway through, which is end of chapter 5. So that's what we're going to do. As we cover N.K. Jemisin's The Broken Earth trilogy. But before we dive in to the beginning of the end, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So my husband and I have been watching, we're all caught up on Abbott Elementary. We've been watching so much Abbott Elementary because then I just got in a kick where I just really liked watching it again. So I've been rewatching it. It's become my new rewatch show, which is an excellent choice for a rewatch show. Choice. And even my husband occasionally will come in when I'm rewatching because he doesn't rewatch as much. He just indulges me with what shows I want to watch a lot of times. So yeah, he'll come in and he's even enjoying the rewatches of this show because it's just so funny. And they've done a lot of really cute bits in this newest season. And I really liked the 100th day of school episode that they had some really cute child actors in this that did a great job. Some of these kids need paid more. I think I think they do a really good job. But they're slight spoilers for Abbott Elementary. There's an episode, the 100th day of school, where the kids at the elementary school, I think this is a pretty widespread thing, but kids usually dress up as old people for the 100th day. And so they did that at Abbott Elementary. And one of the kids comes dressed up as Barbara, the kindergarten teacher.
And they think she's 100 years old.
Yeah. And Barbara says to the little girl, oh, you look great. And she goes, I'm you. And Barbara's like, you who? And she goes, you. And it's just the cutest thing ever. And she says, why would you dress up as me? And the little girl says, because you're 100 years old. Oh. And it's the cutest thing ever. But then they follow it with a scene where they're yeah, but kids really can't tell what people's ages are.
Right.
And so they ask one of the kids, guess our ages. And the kid says, not touching that, and walks away. And I was like, this is excellent. So many of these things are just clicking for me where I've been okay, hilarious kid thinks you're 100 years old when you're clearly not. And then another kid being yeah, not even going to go there because I've figured out enough about adults to know that it's not safe to guess their ages.
Right. Yeah. So, I think that is very safe.
it was very funny. But we've also been watching St. Denis Medical, and we really like that show too. I think those are 2 really good shows, honestly. And they've been doing some fun things on St. Denis. And I think that it also is kind of starting to get into the vein of all these other mockumentaries, in my opinion, where it's perfectly combining some of the zaniness with heart. I mean, Abbott Elementary is definitely more heartfelt than the other ones in my mind, and a little more poignant. But I think St. Denis Medical is starting to try and delve into this a little more, although they lean harder on the zaniness. But there was an episode where they were wait a minute, the hospital said we can bill everything to the hospital the administration said we can bill everything to the hospital for this celebrity's treatment. Let's take care of all these patients who have had their treatments denied. And I was like, oh, brilliant. That's the kind of stuff that I like seeing on these shows where it's oh yeah, very clever and also topical. So I really like those shows. And then for reading, I haven't been reading a ton, and so I've been trying to do slump busting, I guess, because I've just had such a hard time reading. So I was you know what, just pick a book off the shelf that you've been wanting to read for a long time. And so I picked up The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, and I loved it so much. This is a new favorite book, and I didn't rush through it by any means because it's been hard to read. So, not that this book was hard to read, it's just been hard to read in general. So I really just took my time with this book, and I loved every second of this book. It's a Norse-inspired world. It's called Vigorith, and it takes place in this world where the gods used to like exist, and they ended up having this huge battle, this huge war, and they destroyed everything basically, and each other, and they kind of trapped each other in this like prison of sorts, and basically they left humanity to just kind of exist in the ruins of
Mm.
all that's happened. And so there are also like these mythical creatures, and like Vason is what they're called. And then there's people who have blood of the gods within them, which gives them extra powers. Like some of them have the blood of the wolf in them, or the blood of the rat, or what have you. And you can kind of pick up on like character, like qualities of their character as well because of this. But this is a situation where throughout Vigorith, most of the people who have the blood of the gods are mistrusted, and they are persecuted, and often they become thralls, which are like slaves
Yeah.
for nobility. And so we end up following three characters throughout this book. Orca, who is a mother who ends up having to go on a quest to look for her child who has been abducted, because there's been these strange groups that have been coming through and pillaging towns and taking all the children. And
Mm.
then we also follow Varg, who is a thrall who has escaped and ends up joining up with a really famous group of um, these warriors, and he's trying to prove himself among them. And then we also have Elvar, who is kind of nobility, and she rejects her uh, seat alongside her father to go off and earn glory on the battlefield with another very famous group of warriors. So we're following these three different characters, and they were all fascinating. Like sometimes when I'm reading a book and they have multiple POVs and multiple stories that we're following, you know how you kind of get attached to certain characters.
Yeah.
This was one where even though like a chapter on Orca would end, and I'd be like, oh no, I want more Orca. It would start in on Varg, and I'd be like, I kind of want Orca, but then just a couple paragraphs in, I was like, okay, no, I'm all about Varg now. It's okay. We're all in on Varg or Elva or whoever it was that I was transitioning to whatever chapter. But this is just a superbly written book. I can't get over how good this book is. It's great, great, great plot. I just think the world building is excellent, and the character work is fantastic. I was so impressed by Orca and Elvar, especially because John Gwynne is, according to the picture in the back of this book, a big, strong man who has many swords and very large dogs. But he is great at writing strong, powerful women characters. Like these women are fantastic, and I absolutely adore them, especially Orca. It's just such great work here. And I thought that the writing just had so much heart too. And I know that John Gwynne is a parent, and I'm sure that plays into this too, but you can just kind of feel the emotion in his writing. And I just really appreciate that, especially when this is just like a tale that should be, like pretty devastating and everything. There's just so much heart in this. And
Yeah.
you can really feel like the devastation and the drive that the characters have in order to keep moving forward. And it's just, it's a new favorite. Excellently written. The characters are fantastic. I never had a moment where I was just like not wanting to read this. It was so, 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 so good. Highly recommend it. But
That's
Hannah,
awesome.
what have you been enjoying lately?
So I started replaying Hollow Knight with my
Oh yeah, the
little
little
knight.
guy.
Yeah, my little man fighting bugs. It's just been kind of calming. I've been having like a rough time lately, and it's nice to kind of just return to something I know what's going to
Hmm.
happen. And I can just fight little bugs until I get frustrated when I keep dying, and I'm just like, well, I'm going to take a break now because I took a turn and I forgot how I did it last time, and now I made it harder on myself. So that's fun. Um,
Can you have like multiple games going where you just like get out of
the
one and go into another one?
Yes, you can do it. And but I do borrow my sister-in-law's one, so I am always playing Hollow Knight on hers because it's like $35 to buy it yourself, and if it's in my household, why not just play on the one?
Oh,
But
I guess I was
she's
thinking it was, so this is like an online thing?
it's like so it's played through the Switch, so it's not technically online, but you have to like buy the game to have it in your software. It's kind of like a computer, like
Oh,
how we had computer games, like you had to buy the disc or something. It's like you're buying an online
okay.
software to download into your
Like an access
Switch.
code.
Yes, exactly, kind of like that. And so she bought it when it was like on sale like 3 years ago for like 7.99, and now it's like 35 or
Hmm.
$40. And I'm like, I don't
Oh,
really
wow.
need to spend that on mine. But I've also been playing a game called Celeste, which is a weirdly so Celeste is a game that like they were the developers of the game were going to create a new one and recently like disbanded their union, so a little tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow kind of energy.
Hmm.
Um, but that one is like a really hard game where she's trying to climb up a mountain. And part it's a very weird like self-actualized game where part of her is like scared and like breaks apart from her and is fighting and trying to get her to not climb up the mountain. And that's like a huge part of the game is her like trying to learn how to accept every part of herself, even the parts she doesn't like. And so I was playing that game and I finally made this summit. The only thing that I hate about the game Celeste is it tells you how often you've died. And this is a very hard game where you're like trying to like dodge spikes and do all these things and like jump in
Hmm.
certain ways. So you die a lot. So I died like 3,500 times and it kept count, which I find rude. So I played Celeste. I am replaying Hollow Knight. So those are some of the games that I'm doing. But I'm also trying to get back into reading. I feel like you and I both hit like a huge super slump
I think
recently.
everyone has. It just seems like the status of the world has
Mm.
sent everyone into a,
Existential crisis.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's been hard for everyone. I know that just going online, people are all kind of echoing the same thing where they're just like,
Yeah.
how do we exist
They
right now?
exist.
Like,
Yeah.
it just seems hard. So I
Yeah.
don't know that there's any right way to do anything at this
Right.
moment.
And so I mean, I'm still reading quite a lot, but I would say like my audiobooks are the majority of my reads right now. So looking at my story graph because it keeps all of my stats for me. It's at 55% audiobook, so I've listened to 11 audiobooks. I've only completed about 20 books this year, which is still a lot.
I was gonna
Let's,
say most people
like
don't even complete 20 books in a year.
I know, but for me, it's like a little behind the curve, but 11 of those were audio, and that is like not my usual style. Um, so I did though while I was traveling to see my sisters. I had to drive like 4 hours in the car, and my husband drove, so I was able to actually like sit down and get through two books that had been giving me a little bit of trouble that took me quite a while
Hmm.
to finish. The first
One was
is
the Stone Sky.
yeah, no, no, no. I finished those really. I'm really good at finishing my homework, at least on the day of. Um, so the first of which is Greta and Valdin. It's by Rebecca K. Reilly. This book is a lit fic for our lit fic girlies, and it is a book that I would compare to Franny and Zooey, but for like a modern era. Uh, it follows these two siblings who are a little bit at crossroads. Like one of them just recently broke up with his longtime partner. And they have a very messy family dynamic where like his longtime partner is actually like much older than him, and he's actually the brother of his uncle's partner.
Okay.
And so there's a little bit of messiness there. But their parents are two like incredibly smart individuals. Their dad's a professor. Their mom went to college, and their mom this takes place in New Zealand, and then his sister is someone who moved in with him after he broke up with his long-term partner, and they're just kind of learning and loving and figuring out where they want to be in the world. But they are from New Zealand. They live in New Zealand, but they're Maori. So their
Okay.
mother is Maori, their father is actually Russian, and throughout the novel, you learn different layers of things. And this book is so deep. It's so good. It took me forever to read, but it wasn't due to lack of loving it. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
do
yeah.
love this book. It has so many different layers. Like Valdine is a man who was like on track, I believe, to become a physicist, And he kind of had a little bit of a mental breakdown and he was like, I can't do this anymore, and stopped going after his like long career and is now working in front of the camera. Like he hosts this like travel show where he
Hmm.
goes and he pitched the show and he does it. And so it's kind of interesting to like I as someone who left like their very academic job and went to something that was still like high, you know, high standard but not as academic. That really spoke to me. Both of their loves lives, like Greta is a huge pleaser. At the beginning, like this person is kind of using her and she has to like find her own like way outside of this relationship. She is a lesbian woman who has had relationships with men, so it's interesting to kind of read from that perspective where a lot of times she's like, well, am I really a lesbian or am I not? And like it's a lot of internal things. And it also plays a lot with like the conversations we don't have with our parents. Something I've learned as, you know, after losing my mom was I was always someone who asked questions about their life. And because of that, I learned different things. Like one of my sisters was recently talking about the fact that she has kids. And she's like, well, mom never struggled to like all of our friends' moms. I'm struggling with that. And I was like, mom definitely struggled with that. And I named like 3 to 5
Okay,
of the
if
childhood like people that like my mom struggled with who I was friends with them, but she was not friends with their moms and she didn't
I
really like
would
them.
find
Like,
I would pay someone like $100 if they could find me someone that's like, I love all of my
right,
kids' moms,
right. Like it's
my
just like
kids'
it's
friends'
not
moms. Like that does not ever happen.
right. That's like it's just it was a weird thing. And so like I
It's like
know
you
that
get
I had
along
that.
because you share a love for your children who love each other.
Right. Like, and I just had a relationship with my parents where I was very curious, where I was like, hey, what was your guys' first date like? What was it like dating in high school? Because my parents were
Mhm.
high school sweethearts. And my mom told me things like, my dad didn't always treat her very nicely, but he was her first boyfriend and she didn't think she should be treated nicely. So she was just kind of
Mhm.
like going along with it. And there were like things that I learned from my parents because I was curious. And this book has a lot of those elements where like Valdin starts asking his parents about certain things. And then they both like children realize they don't know every aspect of their parents' lives or like their happiness.
Mhm.
They have a vision in their head of what their parents are, but it doesn't exactly equate to that. Specifically from like his uncle being a gay man who lived and grew up in Russia, you know, so he learns a
Mhm.
lot about those things. And so it's really interesting and like undercurrents about identity and social classes and things like their mom got pregnant when she was in like college pretty young and she feels a lot of ways about it because she was from this village where she was supposed to have gotten out and then she just kind of becomes part of a stereotype. So it's like
Mhm.
it deals with a lot of in-depth things and it's really good. I recommend people read it, but it is a struggle and it is very like dense in 336 pages because that's not a long book for
Sure.
everything I just covered. So
Yeah, that's a
uh,
lot.
yeah, but it was really good. I enjoyed it a lot and I definitely recommend it. And
It's so
then
interesting that you brought that up though, because I feel like that's I have like strange fears, but I feel like one of my fears is like not being able to like learn stories like that from people
yeah.
in my family. Like I specifically like think about like my family is really big on like telling stories about like, oh well, such and such old relative used to always say this or that or
Hmm.
whatever. And there are a lot of stories shared within my family, but I also like have this part of me that's like, okay, but we always talk about this story, but what about these other things, you know? And
Right.
there's like this almost like fear of not knowing some of this stuff and it being forgotten, you know?
Right.
Where I'm like, am I the only one that cares? So, and that's likely not true. There's other people in
Yeah.
my family that do care, but it's just such a weird thing to like think about like some of this information not being passed on,
Right.
and you know what I mean?
Well, and, like lineage is such a weird, like I keep a journal, but I am someone who like keeps a light journal. And I've thought about it like, oh, if I ever had children, I really only write in my journal if I'm hugely depressed or like there's a
Yeah, I was gonna
big
say I
moment
would not
happening.
want my kids to
And
read
it's
that.
like, oh, if my kids read that, they would think I was like the saddest individual in the world. I'm like, well, this is like 2 parts of my life. It's not like all of the things that encompass my day to day before I
Hmm.
existed. And it's interesting the stories we tell and why, because I think there are certain stories that we just never share with people.
Yeah.
Um,
My mom recently like shared a story about her childhood and I was just like, Oh my gosh, that's harrowing. Like,
Yeah. That was
what do
I
like she was like, "Oh, I didn't think it was that bad." I'm like, "That doesn't happen to normal people. What are you talking
it's
about?"
so strange to hear like random stories from your grandparents, like, because my dad's dad was like abusive, but he was always like, well, he wasn't really like abusive. He just, like back then people just kicked the shit out of their kids. And it's like,
It's
no.
astonishing the way that people normalize things like that where
Yeah.
uh, yeah, some of the things that my mom has shared with me about like her childhood, I will say here, like she grew up very, very poor
Right.
and had a large family. But like some of the things she'll share, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not, that's not
Right.
normal.
It's so
You poor
strange.
children,
Right?
you poor
So,
grandma.
yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, so it was a really good book. I highly recommend it. I also
Yeah,
read
it sounds great.
a Ramlance novel that also took me a while to get through. It was Sarah Desai's The Singles Table.
How do I
Um,
know that author's name?
she's written a lot of like Desi romances.
Okay.
And so this is the third in a series. I didn't read the other two. Um, because sometimes I'll just pick one and like buy it when I find it, and then I'm like, oh, I guess there were two that came before this. Um, but it was fine. Like I wouldn't say it's my favorite. I think I didn't really like the love interest very much. And honestly, like it just didn't sit really in my head where it all seemed kind of rushed and like the idea behind it seemed nice where it's like this free-spirited lawyer and she like just started with a personal injury firm and her mom's pretty rigid and like what it means to be successful, and then she runs into this man who's ex-military and he's trying to like open his own security business and like get it to the next level, and he's obsessed with work, and she decides she's going to find him a match, but they fall in love instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I don't know, it wasn't really my favorite book. It was, again, it was another one that took me forever to get through. And usually romances are my easy books. And this one I
Mm-hmm.
was like never interested. Like anytime I picked it up, I had a good time, but like I was never interested in picking it up. And so it was just very middle of the road. And
Do you
just,
ever consider like certain books to be like certain time of the year that you're feeling them more?
yeah, yeah,
I feel like
definitely.
romances, like sometimes I'll be like, oh, it's love month. I'll read a romance. But a lot of times it doesn't work for me. And I don't know what it is, but I've noticed just based on like looking back at my reading stats on apps that I do read more or I pick up romances more often in like the spring and summer.
Yeah, I think
And I
people prefer it in the spring and summer.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just like, and there are a lot that are set in the spring and summer that are like,
Yeah,
we're all on vacation or we're all at my family's cabin, that
yeah.
type of thing, which is whatever. I like that too. But I don't know if it's something to do with like seasonal depression.
Yeah, I mean, it might
Where
be where
it's
you're
like,
just like,
you know what I want to read in the winter when it's dark? Lit fic that depresses me because I'm already in a dark place in
might as well
Illinois.
make it darker. Yeah, I,
It's a
I think that
cold, dark Midwest, and we need it darker.
there's a little bit of that. It was just kind of like, ah, that's fine. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's not
And
that
then
big
it's
of a
like
deal.
summertime. It's like, bring out the Emily Henry. We have
Right.
10-hour
Like
days. We have 10 hours of sunlight now.
I could just read it outside and have a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think so. It was a strange book, so it was fine. It's one of those. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was just decent books.
It was just fine.
Yeah, just fine. And then for watching, I watched the first episode of the new season of Yellowjackets. It put me so much on edge. Like Yellowjackets is a show that is like wild and you watch some horrendous stuff, but sometimes the tension of the early episodes are way more upsetting than watching the actual dark stuff happen because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like you're
Really?
just sitting on edge. And so my sister-in-law and I watched the first episode. We both usually can do 2 episodes at a time of Yellow Jackets, and we're kind of far behind. Like 4 episodes have already been posted. And we both were kind of like, I can't watch another one.
Mm,
Like, where it was just too much. And so we kind of just
sure.
like walked away from it for the night. And so good show. I'm having a good
I need to
time,
watch that
but
sometime.
it's dark.
Yeah, there's several shows where I've just been like, yeah, I don't know if I'm in the right space for it.
Yeah,
It's more like I need Abbott Elementary right
right.
now.
I think that is very fine. But yeah, it was it's getting dark out there. Those girls have been out there for a while. So,
Mm. Yeah, I know
and
nothing about that show, so it looks good, and I know you've talked about how good it is before.
yes, it is very good, but I get being like, I don't know if I want to watch that right now.
Yeah, certain things I
uh,
put off because it just hasn't been the right time.
yeah, and then for throwback of movies that I watch on the weekends that are repeats, my husband and his sister had never seen the movie Hardball with Keanu Reeves. Have you ever seen that one?
Nope.
Oh, it is. Watching back, like it's one of those that I watched as a child and I became emotionally connected to. And so you watch it as an adult and you're like, okay, so it wasn't as good as I remember, but it's still so good. Like,
Hmm.
Keanu Reeves is a man who has a gambling problem and he, for some reason, knows this guy who works at a security firm. And the guy's like, it seems like they're friends from childhood. It's never explained because it's an early 2000s movie. And he's like, okay, I'll give you $500 a week if you coach this baseball team for me that he's like giving back to the community for. And it's just like this group of kids who live on the south side of Chicago. And it's kind of about like they all live in the dangerous part of Chicago and they live in the projects. And so they like, this is really important to them because it's somewhere that they can go and they have this like male role model who they can look up to. And he is not the greatest role model. And it's it's a very like it is a very problematic movie when you look back and like, oh, this was created in
Hmm.
the early 2000s. So of course, like these 10 black children can only be saved by one white man, but it
But if it were
is
going to be any white man, it's
it
got to be
should be
Keanu
Keanu
Reeves.
Reeves. We were watching it. My husband was literally like, Keanu Reeves just seems like a good person. And I was like,
He is a good
actually, I know
person.
from the Bechtel cast that he is a very delightful person to have at the bookstore
Yeah.
when he's buying his Sudokus and books. So,
He,
um,
he there's been like so many reports of people saying like he actually is a very decent
he's
person.
the nicest person in the world. And like Michael B. Jordan is in this movie as a child, and it is
Hmm.
like very cute. And it kind of points out like it's a weird way to point it out because there's so many moments in the show where you're like, what's happening? Because like obviously this is a cheaply made production, so like there is a fancy team that always comes to the same baseball park that they're all at already, but they have
Hmm.
nice things and they um, work there. And there's like an evil coach who, takes it all too seriously. It's kind of like Mighty Ducks, but a little bit like lower rent. Um,
Okay.
because at one point there's like age issues, and there is a
It's a
kid
little bit
who
all over the place,
it
isn't
is a
it?
little bit all over the place, but like it has all the like high hits of like sports movies where you have like the sad moments and like, but there are moments that like make me cry because it's a good movie
Hmm.
that pulls on your heartstrings, and it is very funny because you do get to see Reeves rapping Big Papa from Notorious B.I.G. because there is a plot point where
Okay.
one of the kids is a good pitcher because he's just constantly listening to Big Papa over and over.
Okay.
Um, but it's a very I don't know if it necessarily holds up, but I do recommend watching it because I like it. And then we
Okay.
also another movie they had never seen was Now and Then. A movie that
Nope.
traumatized. Oh, you've never seen Now and Then?
Nope.
It is a good movie that is definitely about heterosexual women. It's like
Okay.
it was made in 1995 and it was written by a lesbian writer. And we're all watching it and we're like, this is the queerest movie ever. Like, this is about three lesbians and one bisexual girl, like growing up
Okay.
in the suburbs of Indiana. But it has this like flashback where, um, well, you in the beginning you meet these four girls played by Rosie O'Donnell, Melanie Griffith, Demi Moore, and Rita Wilson. And you find
Nice
out that,
cast.
yeah, and they're all these best friends from childhood. And Rita Wilson is pregnant and about to have a baby, and they all promise to like support each other whenever they could. And like Griffith is like a huge star not now, and Rosie O'Donnell is a gynecologist who in the original version of the script was a lesbian, and for some reason they were
Hmm.
like, we can't have lesbians in 1995, and we surely can't have a lesbian deliver a baby because
Why?
vaginas like, and so they had to add a line in that was like, oh yeah, Chrissy's with her live-in boyfriend, and it's like Rosie O'Donnell is like playing basketball, and she is obviously queer in this
Right.
like, um, but it's a really good movie because then it like flashes back to Christina Ricci, Thora Birch, Gabby Hoffman, and then this young actress called Ashley Aston Moore, and they're like flashbacks, and it's kind of about their life in the summer of 1970. And one of the girls is like the girl who's narrating it is like the Demi Moore character, and her parents are getting a divorce that summer, and she's like hiding it from her friends, and they're all like growing up and hitting that like wonderful age where they're about to become like, adolescent adults, in a
Hmm.
way, and they're all just like kind of growing up. It's a really good movie. I recommend watching it. A lot of people say it's kind of like the female version of Stand By Me.
Never watched that one
And
either.
oh, okay, well, I like it a lot. I think it's really good. But it is definitely like two of the characters. It's like the character who grows up to be future Rosie O'Donnell. Like you could watch it and be like, these two girls are falling in love.
Oh, okay.
And but like I kind of like watching it that way because like, oh yeah, it was created by this queer writer, and it is like a pretty well-known movie. It's like kind of a cult classic, and like to kind of
So
have
none,
that
they're all straight in the show,
they
or
all they all are straight in the movie
okay,
because it was 1995, but it is like because the writer was
but it's
queer,
just very
there's
coded.
yeah, it's very coded and you like get that feeling from all the different
Okay.
characters. And it's kind of nice because like you're rewatching something with like an adult lens and you're like, oh yeah, this has always been here and this is like
Hmm.
a movie that many queer people identified with and like,
Hmm.
that's important too. So um I really liked it, and I'm pulling it up. I pulled it up on Letterboxd before I started talking, and they're like all of the ratings are about how this is a queer movie. So it's like
Interesting.
the energy of a queer movie from 1995 era. But I really like this movie. It's a fun adolescent movie, and this movie like holds a special place in my heart because I never finished it as a child. I had to watch it as an adult because there's a moment where the girls do seances in the cemetery. And I think it was like 6 or 7 when we watched it all as a family. And like you see the shadow of a boy that they think they like brought a ghost back to life. And like throughout the movie, you figure out like that's probably not happening. They're just like
Hmm.
riling each other up. But I was 6 or 7 when I watched this and terrified of ghosts. And I started sobbing in the living room and left the room. And my mom like tried to get me to come back in. And she was like, the ghost part is over. And I was like, it's not though. And I refused to watch the rest of the movie and sat in my kitchen. And so that is a
Okay.
very specific memory I have from my childhood. Um,
Well, it's
but
good that
yeah,
you were able to overcome that because now
I
you really like
know.
the movie.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. I highly recommend. It's a good, like, I don't know, coming of age movie about friendship and things like that.
I'm not gonna lie, I do like Rosie O'Donnell. Like, I
Yeah,
think she
great.
she is fun and actually a really good actor. So,
It's just really funny because like obviously all these women are supposed to be heterosexual and like I made a lot of jokes
mhm.
as we were watching it because like there are moments where like two girls are looking deeply into each other's eyes and I'm like, but remember they're all straight. And at the end, Rosie O'Donnell's a gynecologist delivering, her best friend's
Mhm.
baby. And my husband goes, should she be allowed to have to like birth her own child? And we all sat there and I'm like, in the movie, it's not her child. You just think it is. And he was like, oh, right. He actually
Wait a
forgot.
minute.
He forgot for a second, like that
Oh,
Rita
that they
Wilson
weren't a
and Rosie
couple.
O'Donnell weren't a couple. He thought it was like
Oh,
a couple. I
I
was
was
like,
confused. I thought you meant
oh
like
no,
she was delivering her own baby, like
no,
she was
like
pregnant
she
and
was,
having her own baby. I was
no,
like,
it just like
yeah, I don't think that should be allowed
Rita
ever.
Wilson and Rosie O'Donnell were like so obviously a couple. Like at one point, Rosie O'Donnell's like, we have beer in Rita Wilson's house, and it's like there's no reason that she would say it like
Right.
that. But like you do meet Rita Wilson's husband, but he's not there during the birth, so like he lifts right out. So,
Gotcha.
very funny, very good movie. Highly recommend. Now and then pulls on the heartstrings. Um, and I love Thora Birch, so she was a huge instrumental part of my childhood. Um,
You've been hitting all those childhood faves, those
I
movies
know. It's good.
recently.
I've been rewatching a lot of movies. We do a lot of
Hmm.
like movies on Saturday nights where we do double feature. And so that was the double feature of the because I was thinking about doing sports because I was thinking about doing hardball and then Remember the Titans and we finished hardball and I was like, I'm not in the mood for racism right now. Like,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
I wonder how that one holds up because I haven't watched that in a really long time.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to watch as an adult,
Hmm.
but I definitely want to watch it. I loved that movie growing up because I had a weird
I did
obsession with
too.
Hayden Panettiere.
Okay. Yep.
Certain moments where I'm like, oh yeah, I was just
I'm like,
bisexual all
heroes.
along. Like, did I love Hayden Panettiere and want to be her, or did I just have a crush on her and I didn't have the words to vocalize it? You make the decision. But yeah,
Okay.
that was my long tangent. Sorry for going down a rabbit hole on things I was reading, watching, and or enjoying.
We haven't talked in a while, so you just got them all out.
I know it's been a couple weeks, guys. Last week was a bonus, so this
Mhm.
week was us doing a huge catch up. So let's dive in to the Stone Sky.
Stone Sky, which honestly gets a lot more complicated.
It's so I there's been a little bit of a gap from when we record from what I read, and I sat down and I was like, I'm not sure I remember what happened, so I can't wait to find out what I read about last section.
Which, I mean, things get a little more complicated this go around in this book. And I feel like it's amped up a little bit more each book, but this one
Yes.
was amped up a few more notches than previous books, if that makes sense. Like from
Well,
the
because we
fifth
get a whole
season
nother
to the
character.
Obelisk
Like,
Gate, it's like, okay, we're still with it. And then we are like, okay, Obelisk Gate to Stone Sky, chick, 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 chick. Okay, well, here we are. I'm like, oh,
do you want
wait,
this
I
to
missed a few things.
it's wild how short this book is. Like it's not a like it is 500 pages, but I feel like it could be like 800 pages easily with how much plot
Here's the
Pancake
thing, though.
Jemisin
Jemison
shoves
does
into
not
this.
really. She's very brief. She doesn't go into extreme detail on a lot of this stuff. She
Yeah.
very much leaves it as like a the readers will figure it out or the readers are
Hmm.
gonna know. Like it's
Yeah.
not so it's like how we talk about YA books a lot, where it's like, yeah, things are moving at such a brisk pace and we just have to accept how things are happening. That's kind of what's going on
Yeah.
here. But this is very complicated.
It is.
So we begin with a prologue at the end of the world, and our narrator is attempting to piece together these memories. And I really like the way that Jemison describes all of this because she describes it as like an insect in amber. And it's this
Hmm.
really poetic way to describe like the disconnect of memories and how memories can kind of be like frozen in time and how you can kind of look at them. And the narrator explains that they witnessed these memories, but not quite. And the land that they're in was once three lands, which is now the stillness. And the narrator explains that the world ending is just a lie and that things are just fine. And the narrator describes a web of cities and this Silangist and how the people there have thrived in
Hmm.
this living city. It's just this like really fantastic, like very like it gives me like vibes of I wanted to say like Singapore because I'm seeing like all of these like uh, have you ever seen like those you've been to Singapore.
I've been to Singapore. It's actually a very big joke in my house because my husband, like some people go to Singapore for his job, and he's always like, Hannah loves Singapore. And I'm like, well, it's like the only other place I went over like across the sea before my honeymoon. So like, yes, I
Sure.
love it, but and it is beautiful. But I was very funny that I'm like, I like that now, like your work just has this impression of me where it's like Hannah's obsessed with Singapore. And I'm like, well, I enjoyed my vacation there. Like,
Well, I knew you had been there, but like have only seen pictures.
mm,
And so I've seen like a very like technological, but also like immersed within nature society
yes,
is like what it
very
looks like
true.
to me.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of what I picture with this living city. And it's advanced, but it's not using up like tons of resources. And at the city's core, there's this amethyst obelisk and a
Mm.
boy who is at a pretty prison.
Mhm.
And it's our narrator, Hoa. And Hoa
But is he
knows,
Hoa? I do like the way he like Jemison always uses naming conventions where he's like, well, you can call me something else. I'm not really sure what my name was, at that
mhm,
time, but just call me Hoa because that's how you recognize me. And I was like, oh, that's such a beautiful sentiment.
sure. And Hoa knows what matters at Earth's end and tells us that we aren't alone and that he's angry.
Mhm.
Now there is the stillness above. Now there's the stillness above the lava, uh, this chamber of a giant volcano, and Hoa's like standing in this cavern at the heart of it. And he tells us that the end of something, or he tells us that the end of something or a disaster is relative. And I kind of like that idea too, that like just because it's the end of something doesn't mean it's the end. It could be a beginning for
Yes.
other people, or that's a disaster in one person's eyes is actually not really a disaster. And when he talks about a disaster and how things are relative, he references Jija and Nasun.
Mhm.
And then Hoa did watch the world burn and tells us not to lament when a world built on fault lines falls, but to
Mm,
rage instead, which I love that. Like all of this in
that's
this
so
prologue is
good.
just so meaningful. And then he says he'll tell us of the ending of Salinger and how he opened the gate and flung away the moon, smiling as he did so. Just
Beautiful.
perfection in writing,
Yeah.
honestly. Like you're reading
And
this, you're like, how can someone come up with something like so poetic and good? I
also so wild to me. Like I am a prologue stan. I will admit that. I think sometimes they can go overbroad. Robert Jordan,
I was
but
gonna
it
say
always
at times
at
I'm okay with
times,
prologues, but
yes.
other times I'm like, what? Just write another chapter.
I love a good prologue, and I think Kate Jemisin is on my side when it comes to this because like
Mhm.
hers are so effective. Like it's like, oh yeah,
Yes.
just put us right in it and make sure that it is added context to the story we are about to read.
Yes,
That is
they're
the point of a
directly related,
prologue.
and I think also they have like this overarching connection to
Hmm.
the entire book. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah, I agree.
I think that there's more connections here than we get in other prologues, if
Yes.
that makes sense. So then chapter one, we're back in our POV. We're Essen, the origin who opened up the obelisk gate. And Hoa tells us that the fulcrum limited us, and that because we were quick to conform, they loosened the leash. And this brought us to Alabaster, which was a good thing.
Hmm.
And the fulcrum was scared of him. And it's kind of funny because now, if you're like thinking about how the fulcrum wasn't really scared of us and thought that we weren't really a threat, we're really the one who has wiped out several towns worth of
Yep.
people. And so we have this like dream of succumbing to the fulcrum and just undoing it all in order to have them alive. And that's the people that we've lost. But we realize that this would have changed a lot of things and kept some things from happening if we would have. It's kind of like that butterfly effect
Yeah.
situation where it's like, if you do this, this changes. So is it worth it?
Hmm.
So we saved Castrima and we figured out the gate and we killed excuse me, we killed Alabaster, though we think he wanted us to for now.
Yes.
And at the moment, we're the most powerful origin on the planet, but this isn't for long since we're turning to stone. And so far,
Yes.
our right arm is like solid stone, almost like up to the shoulder. And it's going to get worse, but we basically have no choice in order but to keep going in order
Mm.
to end the fifth seasons for all time. So for now, we just want to get to Nasun and get her back from Jija. And we're in this like half sleep of sorts, and somebody's caring for us. Somebody's coming in and out. We're kind of in like this
Mm.
fugue state, really. And when we start waking up, we recognize the spindle and that it's been 2 years into this season. And the people
Mm.
around us are talking, and Hjarka makes a comment that she lost a bet with Tonki and then calls the others. And so Lerna comes over and he checks on our reflexes. And while we're struggling to wake, Tonki is asking us about our dreams. And as we get
Hmm.
up, we're realizing that what's happened to our arm is it's turned to stone. And it was like this when Hoa brought us back. And
Right.
Lerna basically suggests that we just let Hoa eat it when we were like,
Hmm.
what should we do about this? And
Well, also during this time we're traveling because even though we saved Kostrima, the people, the
well, we haven't
actual
got
like,
there yet.
oh, okay, we haven't gotten there yet. Sorry. Go
Well,
ahead.
they have been carrying us on like
Yes.
a stretcher
Right.
of sorts. But I was
So we
still
know
kind
we're
of in
no
that
longer.
initial like waking up state that
Oh,
we haven't
sorry.
realized that we've been traveling.
Okay,
Uh
my bad.
uh
Spoilers.
spoilers. But yeah, so basically Lerna's like, you know what? You could probably just let Hoa eat it, but it's a weird suggestion because at the same time that he suggests this, he's also like kind of disgusted by this idea of Hoa eating this stone.
I mean,
And
it is bothersome if you think about it. Like if my arm turned to stone and we're like, well, it could feed this, this being that you don't understand. I think that would be like a little bit.
so we have this connection to Hoa, and we're like, you know what, it's okay if that's something that he can use. And also we know about like the transformation that's going to occur after witnessing
Mhm.
everything with Alabaster. And so
Yes.
we're kind of like, and we don't really mind if Hoa needs the arm and everything,
We're
especially like
being the
knowing
epitome
how
of
this is gonna
Esoon, which
go.
is we're being the epitome of Esoon, which is I'm going to judge everyone until it happens specifically to me.
Kind of. And then
Yeah.
also just like being in the ideal situation of like, I know what's gonna happen. I'm just gonna get
Yeah.
ahead of it. So
Exactly.
so then and we also realize that this is clearly not just a chance situation either.
Hmm.
So Tonki and Lerna are helping us up, and we're kind of having a hard time even remembering that this thing is our arm. Like we're referring to this as this thing. And so finally Yika comes over and we smile at Yika and we're like, oh, Yika's our friend. We have this moment where we're like, oh, we're actually friends now. And
Yeah.
we learn that she and Harka have made bets on our survival, basically. And then she asks Lerna to get us walking ASAP, saying that we need to carry our own weight. Typical Yika, just being like, you know what, be useful around here.
It's also very funny because she's like, "Oh, we're friends," and Nico's kind of sitting there like, "Yeah, maybe not."
Get back to work.
Yeah, I may
You've
be
been
mad at
laying
you.
around long enough.
Yeah.
And so this coldness is, we think, because we destroyed the geode. And we remember Renanis destroyed the com. And Lerna tells us that we would have been doomed either way because we're kind of
Hmm.
blaming ourselves here. We're like, we ruined everything again. Like, it makes me think of the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend song. You've ruined everything, you
You
stupid
stupid
bitch.
bitch. You're just a lying little slut
Slut
who
who
ruins
ruins things and
things.
wants the world to burn.
Bitch, you're a
You're a
stupid
stupid bitch.
bitch and lose
Lose
some
some weight. Oh, I
weight.
love that song
Oh,
so much.
it's such a good song. What a
That
great
one's great.
show.
Oh man. So yeah, we're kind of in one of those moments where we're like, ah, gosh, we ruined everything again. And Lerna's like, look, here's the deal. Like, we would have been doomed either way. So
Hmm.
don't be too down about it. Like, there was no good outcome. And so then he says they'll get over it and
Hmm.
that the people will move on. And he's implying basically that he got over Tarimo being destroyed. And we're like, oh, we didn't even realize that you were
Look,
over
this
Tarimo. Like,
this
okay.
isn't my first destroyed city. I'm sure it won't be my
Yeah. Like,
last.
wow, you're already over your second destroyed city. Oh, good for you. Growth.
Oh, maybe we should date now.
That's so cool. Follow me around for a little bit more, change a few of my diapers, and then let's maybe hook up. Uh, so suddenly we have like this memory of, oh, Nasun. And we know where she is, but Tonki's like,
Mhm.
you need to shut up right now. Otherwise you're gonna get kicked out of the com. And so ash is falling and it's obstructing our view, and we kind of just crash again, fall asleep. And
Mhm.
when we wake up, it's nighttime and we're in this forest, and we think we must not be that far from Castrima, maybe like a few days walk or so. And people are making camp, and we've kind of just been left over to the side on our stretcher. Like people just
Yeah.
left us there by ourselves. And we wake up and we're like, oh, everybody's just over doing their thing. Okay. Guess we'll get up. And we're not like that worried because we aren't really hungry at the moment anymore, but we are kind of upset because we're like, oh, our running sack's gone, and that's been with us like all this time, like this bag of supplies and everything. And also, there's just like a sentimental value, I feel like, to having things that you carry with you through hard times. And so then Hoa appears and he shares that he's the one guiding the comm to Renanis. And when we question his allegiance and his allyship, he's like, I'm not an ally to them. And so we
Yeah.
basically realized that he made a deal with Yika, like, help keep her alive
Hmm.
and I'll guide you guys. And we realized that Hoa has kept us alive all this time too. And
Yep.
it's not really even a comm of sorts anymore. It's not a community. It's just a group of people who are kind of like-minded that are traveling together, which is there's such a weird divide, I think, in this line between is it a community or is it just a group of people? And I think that that's an interesting concept to think about that Jemisin brings up often, where it's just like they're
Yes.
not a comm, they're just a group of people. And I'm like, but at what point does a group of people become a community? So
Right.
I think that's
Well, and at
really
what point
interesting.
in like, I mean, if we look at like the hierarchy of needs, like, at what level
Hmm.
does that need, the need for survival or food deteriorate any type of community? And it's
Right.
it's interesting. So yeah, that's really fascinating.
So then we're like, Hoa, do you want this arm? And he's
Do you want to eat my arm? Are you a little snacky right
like,
now?
not here. And so he transports us through the earth. And when we get to where he takes us, he's like holding our arm and like looking at it reverently. And he's like, here's the thing, don't look at this as like sustenance. This is not sustenance for us. And he says that you see what was lost in us, but we gained too. And
Hmm.
he says that everything is for us. And we say that we believe him. And then he opens his mouth extremely wide, like unsettling. It's very
Yeah.
unsettling. And it's extremely wide and he eats our arm.
Yeah.
So
He
then
has what
chapter
I call a snacksident. So
it's an accident. I love that.
I do it when I come home with ice cream and I'm like, I had a snacksident
I would say
today.
this is not an accident. This is very much planned.
I mean, I also plan to go get ice cream. I just call it a
Oh,
snacksident to make myself feel
okay.
better. It's like,
I don't know that. Do you think they feel good about this? Like the
I
way
don't
that this is
know.
all like kind of playing out, it makes me wonder like how do they actually feel about this?
I don't
It's
know. Yeah.
interesting. So chapter 2, we're back with Nasun, and Nasun is standing over Jija, and she's lightheaded from where he stabbed her, and she's bleeding a lot. And he
Yes.
really left her with no choice because he was basically like, stop being an origin or commit suicide. And she's
Yeah.
like, well, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And so Shafa is there, and so is Steel. They're on either side of her like guardians of sort. And Steel gives, and Nasun has this moment where she's like, Steel gives me purpose, and Shafa gives me love. And the purpose that Steel gives Nasun like puts some fight back in her and
Hmm.
like kind of motivates her to stay alive because I think especially in these moments of extreme grief, she's really kind of clinging to what am I supposed to be doing here? Like, what's the point
Right.
of this all? And Steele has given her this purpose and kind of reignited this in her. And so she's holding this shard of like a blue crystal, and it's part of the sapphire obelisk. And she can't send it back up yet
Hmm.
because Umber and Nita are there watching her. And
Yeah.
she realizes that they have these larger tendrils that are connecting them to the ground, the silver. And she refers to them as being like more puppet like than Shafa, who has these but aren't as strong, which I
Hmm.
think is interesting how she looks at them as being puppets but not Shafa. And I just love like kind of getting that disconnect between the way that she views these different guardians and how a little bit later on in this section that we're covering, some of the other children that are part of Found Moon also have deep connections with these other guardians.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting to see how the connection that you have and how strong it is with one person makes you view other people, even of the same station, quite
Hmm.
differently.
Yep.
So um, we realize that they're watching us, and so or I'm sorry, she ends up distracting them with a Taurus, and then she goes for Nita because Shafa tells her to do this. And she can sense that Nita's silver threads are like thrumming. And Nasun kind of panics slightly, but then Nita's like gaining this control. And so who comes in but Steel? And
Hmm.
he goes for Nita. And then in the background, Shafa and Umber are fighting. And Nasun is afraid, but she's like, I know Shafa's got this. I'm not that worried. Shafa's like extremely violent. It's okay. We've got it all covered. And then Shafa just brutally kills Umber. It's just
Hmm.
disgusting. Like smashes in his skull and everything. It's just hideous.
Yep.
And while Steele and Nita are fighting, some of Nita's last words are, it did what it had to do. It's angry and it demands justice. To which
Hmm.
Steele said, it's had its justice. And then he kills Nita, which is really kind of ominous. Like everything
Yeah.
about Steel is so
I
ominous at
know.
this
I
point.
get
And
real freaked out by steel and like, the juju is bad. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
Shafa then says that they have to leave. And Nasun is like, please don't kill the other children. Like, don't kill them. And Shafa kind of has this look like, okay, but don't know if this is a good idea. And so Nasun has this hurt shoulder, and Shafa's helping her wrap it, and he's comforting her. And she asks what he will do with the metal that he pulled out of Umber, which is basically like right where their Sisipine was. Like right in that
Yeah.
area, they have this metal.
Yeah.
And Shafa's like, oh, I'm not too sure. We used to like recycle stuff like this, but I'll probably leave it somewhere like in a place where nobody can find it, like as we're traveling. And Nasun also isn't too sure what she's supposed to do with her shard of the obelisk either.
Hmm.
So there's this moment again where Nasun is questioning if she's a monster. And she's thinking of her protectors too, Steel and Shafa. And she's like, I'm a monster and I have two monsters who are protecting me. Cool. This is an awful situation. I don't know how this has all become the way it has. And she also starts thinking about the obelisk gate and the moon and how some of her choices just aren't choices at all, really.
Right.
And I really like that concept too of how you're kind of forced to do things that you're not really given a choice, even though it's in the package of being a decision.
Well, and it's one of those things where it's like, it's literally the end of the world. So yeah, you don't have a choice in some,
Hmm.
aspect for, and it's very wild to think about when it comes to things like, can you stop the end of the world? If you had the power to, what would you sacrifice? I think that we're delving into all of those
And also
things.
just the will to survive. And
Yeah.
I think in moments where people have a strong will to survive, similar to like Nasun talking about having some purpose now, I think
Yeah.
that when people are put into those type of situations, things become less of a decision and more you have to do this now.
Yeah.
So then we switch over to a new chapter of sorts, Sil Anagist 5. And this is a flashback of sorts, and it shows Hoa or Hua
Hmm.
and Gewa, who are being introduced by a conductor to Kalenli. And they're all discussing this project and its figures, etc., and how there is this change that's going to be made. And conductor Galat gave the order. And Cleanly says that she has this arcane awareness and that she's there to teach them. And Ho is like a little unsure how she can be a tuner. And she's like, well, here's the thing. I'm the model and you guys are the artwork. Like you guys were built off of me. And so I was like the first to survive. And so I'm just kind of this model that everything was built off of.
Well, and doesn't he like Hua
He
or
com-
Hoa kind of talk about the fact that like,
he compares her a lot to Esun, to us.
yeah. Well, and he also indicates that like a lot of them who are, working and who are these like, extensions are white and she is black, I thought. So I
Yes.
thought that was an interesting,
Yes. But
yeah.
I think we're also assuming too that Hoa or Hua is still a stone eater.
Yes.
So they have like this stone
White. Yeah.
skin. So, uh, yeah, and that Kalenli says that she's the first to survive and that she has the onyx obelisk attuned to her and that the plutonic engine is finally going to be starting up. And Kalenli's come to give them a sense of peoplehood. And Hoa
Mhm.
tells us that people cannot be possessions and that a new concept starts to take shape in us, revolution, and that this is the beginning. I think
Mhm.
that the beginning being revolution is so cool. I
Yeah.
I love that, especially when we're talking about engines and revolutions and everything. Like
Engines and
it all
how
fits. Jemisin,
people can't
you're
be
fantastic.
yeah, people can't be objects or things to own. Yeah, great.
So then we switch back over to chapter 3 to our point of view, and as soon as we are up and walking, Yika is like, "Get rid of that stretcher."
Get up off
Yika,
your butt.
Yika is just like no sympathy at all.
Get up off that thing, shake it, you'll feel better.
Which it doesn't make us feel better. We actually fall behind quite a bit,
Yeah,
and we're
quite a
like
bit.
the last one to make it to any stop. And we're like, well, luckily we aren't hungry anymore. But
Yeah.
uh, it's not as bad because like even though we're like lagging behind Hoa and Tonki and Hyarka and Lorna, they're like lagging with us. Hoa and Tonki are with us, and we're like, oh, it's like the good old days, like the OG crew.
Oh my gosh, the crew's back together again. We should
And
start a
then
band.
Hyarka and Lorna are there, and we're like, okay, I guess you guys can be with us because you're kind of our lovers, whatever. And Lorna is like really concerned about us because he's like, look, you were just in a coma like yesterday. So you probably shouldn't be off of your stretcher. I'm a doctor and I'm actually know a little bit about comas and that it's not great for somebody to walk a huge distance after they've just woken up. And really, we're doing a lot better than we expected and that anyone expected of us. But the only problem is we're going the wrong way. So
Yeah.
Tonki is like, here's the deal. You've got to make up with Yika. And we're like, Yika's pissed at us. And Tonki's like, she's just scared. But you
Yeah.
need to make up with her before you leave. If you think you're gonna like head off, you're gonna have to wait until we get over to the west a while before you even try to leave. But if you think you're
Because
gonna leave at all, you're gonna
we
have to
are
make up with her first.
we are all about finding Nasun. We're just like, I have to get to my daughter. And yeah, and
And it's also
Tonki
a
is there
thing
for a
too.
reality check of like, you
Yes.
don't know how long it's been. You don't know if you're going to get there in time. You're going to have to travel. So, like, it's better to travel safely. And then once we recombobulate, we reestablish our,
Well,
like
and she
people
points
we
out
can
too, she's
trust.
well, because we're like, look, here's the deal. She shouldn't be mad at us. We saved Kastrima. Why is she mad at us? And Tonki's like, okay, so you saved Kastrima from one danger and put Kastrima in another danger.
Right.
Okay. And she's like, but here's the thing. If you help Kastrima, Yika will be back on your side. And you don't really want to be in a situation where you don't have allies. You need allies. And we're frustrated because we're like, well, we know where Nasun is right now.
Right.
And Tonki, like you said, starts to talk us down, asking us these questions. And she's like, here, you know what? Let me go get some food shares. And she's like, I'll get an extra. And we're like, not two extras, implying Hyarka. And
Yeah.
Tonki kind of warns us, like, here's the thing, don't attach yourself to others. I'm trying not to do that. And you also need to be careful, aka Lerna. Don't be taking on your boy too quickly here.
Donkey says, look, we are at the end of the world. You cannot be making long-term decisions with
You're pretty
someone.
important and you can't be getting too involved with Lerna. And so Tonki is like, here's the thing. Nasun has made it all this time, and it's been a long time. It's been 2 years, and Jija hasn't killed her. Like, we know that she's been playing with an obelisk and that she fought off the gate. And Tonki's like, for the moment, just let's not go after Nasun. She's like, I'd like to go after her too. I'd love to see another obelisk user. Like, this would be a dream for me to study her. But here's the thing, we need to kind of focus on what we're doing. And we we travel with Kastream and we enter this like stone forest, which is really cool. And we decide, okay, here's the thing. We'll go talk to Yika and we tell her like we're pretty impressed that you decided to like go straight into this instead of like going around it.
Mhm.
And we're like, we kind of need to stay up and stay on like a watch rotation in case there's going to be attacks. And Yika's like,
Right.
oh, okay, good idea. You can have the last watch. And we're like, okay, cool. That's the worst time. Sounds great. Can we have
Well,
a
because we
weapon?
also like
And
had a
she's like,
sense that like
no,
we also had a sense that people were there when we came. We're like, oh, this kind of
for
has like
sure.
rancid energy. We're set up for something to happen. So,
Well,
Yika,
Yika
let's
can kind of suss things too.
yeah.
And we're able to suss a lot better than her.
Yes.
So we're like, look, there's a trap over there. There's this over there. There's this over here. And Yuka's like, okay, well, that's impressive that you were able to assess all of that. And I wish I could do that, but okay. thanks for your help, but still no weapon for your watch, like, and also no stretcher. We threw that out,
Yeah, we
and
threw out we threw out your stretcher.
and so
No stretcher for you.
so then we kind of imply that Yika's mad at us over the geode, to which she's like, "You think I'm mad about the geode? Seriously?" And then she's like, "Come walk with me." And so as we're walking, she's like, "Have you made any friends during this time that you've been with us? Do you have any connections?" And we're like, Lerna?"
You like
and,
you question
and
mark?
Yika's basically like, "That doesn't count. You knew him before." But Yika leads us through all the people and through these prisoners, and we see Daniel, who we fought,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Fald, who are arguing briefly about earning a place in the com. And then
Hmm.
Yika ends up killing Fald for claiming that Kastrimans aren't going to make it.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of a huge power move on Yika's part because
Oh, yeah.
she's very much like putting to rest the idea that her com will not survive. She's like, no, we're going to make it. I'm in charge here. We're definitely making it. And then she decides to make the people, the prisoners who were witnesses to this, strongbacks within the com. And she
Hmm.
says there's lots of ways to be safe, and she's playing a long game. And that if this com is going to get stronger, they need to have people who are helpful to help them become stronger. And if they have a lot of strength, then they'll get to Renanis alive.
Yeah.
And after all this time in her com, she says that we're still a Raga and that she chooses to be a head woman and a Raga
Hmm.
while we just choose to be a Raga. And then we
It's
warn
it's
Daniel that,
interesting to
but
see. Sorry, I know that you're and we're discussing the plot, but it's definitely something I want to talk about was like, we can talk about it in themes episodes, but like Esun is very much she's supposed to be the prototype of like the protagonist who's like, oh yes, I come in and I make all these bold choices and I do these things. But Jemisin is so effective in being like, and that person is also most of the times an idiot. They're just really strong and they're just
Mhm.
not thinking as far ahead as they need to be. And then we have Yika, who is like that character who, in a lot of other books, she's like the leader of she's the president. She's this, she's strong. She's playing 4D chess, but she also has this like in a lot of other books they're always like above everything, but Yika's like, no, I can still make the hard decisions to kill someone, I can still do this. And you're
Mhm.
also on her side where you're never like, ooh, this person is evil, because I feel like when I'm like, oh yeah, Yika was being smart here, she knows what she's doing. And I think Jemison has a way of making these characters someone who you like understand fundamentally, where if I think about like other dystopian novels, which most of them were YA, they're a lot more one note. And so I'm really impressed with this.
I do think though, in like terms of Yika, you can feel a lot of like uncomfortable feelings or surrounding decisions that she makes. Like she doesn't want to kill people.
No,
Like she
she
doesn't
doesn't.
want to have to do things in that way. But she recognizes like here's the thing, I'm willing to sacrifice one if
Hmm.
it's going to keep us as a group stronger and help us become more successful
And
because
she's
she
actually
is playing this long game.
more annoyed when she has to keep someone alive that she thinks is not effective, a
Yeah.
la Alabaster. Or I think
Yep.
like right now she's kind of like, as
As
soon I
soon.
have to keep you alive. I had to keep Alabaster alive, but
Hmm.
you are becoming more of a liability than you are a benefit.
Yes. So then we're just kind of like standing there with Daniel and we're like, here's the thing, if she dies, you do. And Daniel's like, you're not very good at this, are you? Which is hilarious. So then we switch back over to Nasun in chapter 4, and Shafa guides the other kids and Nasun out of Jeketi. And he's like, we'll get the kids some supplies. And so they put Nita and Umber in their beds. And they're like, it's actually pretty effective with Nita. Like, you can't tell that anything's wrong. It just looks like she's sleeping. But Umber, on the other hand, that looks a hot mess because Shafa was awful in
Yeah.
what he did to Umber. And so they also just had to leave Jija where Nasun had felled him. And the other kids, they're begging Shafa to let them come with, but he's like, I'm not gonna let you come with. And some of the kids are like, here's the deal. we'll end up forcing our way into comms.
Mm-hmm.
And Shafa basically is like giving them advice on how to show that
Do
they're
that.
powerful and kill their way into comms. And he's like,
Yeah.
don't kill them all at once. Kill the first one, make it violent, show that you're powerful, act like it was some self defense that you had to do it. And here's the thing, if the season ends, you need to run and hide because if Guardians find out that you did that, they will come find you because they're going to be looking for you anyways.
Also wild because at first he really wants to just kill all the children. And Nasun is
Oh,
the one
yeah.
who's like, you can't do
Well,
that. I can't let you do that. Like, we need to let them give them a chance.
the the other children they hate Nasun and like
Yeah.
Nasun's trying to kind of be like, well, you'll be successful, lots of other comms will want you because you've gotten really good at orogeny, and they're like, shut up, Nasun, we hate you. And one of the kids even is like, Nita used to sing songs to me, like,
Yeah.
you killed my guardian who I had that kind of connection like you do with Shafa. And so then Nastan's just like, oh gosh, I am truly a monster. And she's like,
Huh?
do you still think that you should have killed all of them, Shafa? And he's like, yeah, I think it would have been better. I
Mm.
think it would have been better to kill all of them. Because really, it's unsure, it's a huge unsurety that like are they going to survive?
Right.
Are we setting them up for failure? What's going to happen to them as we set them forth like this? Okay, so they have a plan to kill their way into a comm and try to do this, but they're still relatively untrained and
No one mourns the wicked.
they're
Sorry.
just they're really
That is,
set up for failure.
yeah.
So then they decide that they're going to go to Core Point, which is a city on the other side of the world. And Shafa reveals that he knows that Nasun wants to be in control of the Obelisk Gate, which
Hmm.
was basically the Guardian's original purpose. And he also reveals that he knows of the moon. And
Hmm.
Nasun's kind of like, okay, so some of these memories are coming back to you. You know of some things. Like, this is interesting. And so Nasun said, I just wanted to live somewhere nice with you. And I can't do that without hiding who I am. And she's like, I just want to be ordinary. And when, and she has like this breakdown, and Shafa's like questioning her, like, what would you do if you could fix the stillness and fix the stills from being afraid of origins? And she's like, I'm unsure. And she has this moment where she has this flashback remembering her last day in Torimo and finding Uche, and she's like, I wouldn't fix it even if I knew how. And then she
Hmm.
just completely breaks down, sobbing, crying. And it's a heartbreaking moment
Yeah.
that she's basically just wanting to end it all and everyone who hates her. And
Hmm.
Shafa's comforting her and telling her to make the end that she needs. And she's like, I don't want to lose you, Shafa. I don't want to lose you. And he's like, make the end you need because you are my redemption, which is a really heartbreaking moment to read. And it's also just very conflicting as a reader to hear Shafa in these moments, like knowing all that we know about Shafa,
Yeah.
to have this type of moment and be like, oh gosh, you do you get a redemption? Oh man,
I mean, that goes back to our themes of the last episode that we, talked about
so
this, where
rough.
I think that is a look on redemption. And also, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I think we've talked about this before, and like, what journey are you on? You can still be harmful even if you are on the
Mm-hmm.
journey to discovering or just, and I think
Sure.
that is Shafa a little bit where it's like, okay, he is on the road to recovery. Do I necessarily think he deserves redemption at this moment? No, because I don't think enough work has been done. Like, he
I mean,
lost
just like
his,
five
yeah,
minutes ago, he brutally murdered someone.
yes. And he wanted to kill all the children and take the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
And even with this, it's like, well, you're my redemption. But the problem when you're on a journey of like healing and you're not there yet, your way to help others is also skewed because he's
Yeah.
saying like make the end you need. And it's like, no, you should actually just be sitting with her in her own misery. This is
Mm-hmm.
a teenage girl who is
Yeah.
mourning, murdering her father and who had never fully processed the death of her brother at the hands of her father. It's like,
Which
no,
is she even a teenager yet? Is she, I thought she was
I
like 11 or 12.
well, I know it's been 2 years, and I thought at the beginning of the book she was
I
like,
thought she was 9 and then
oh, okay.
she's
So
like
she's an
11 now, I'm
11-year
thinking.
old dealing with these things. And it's like, so you're not actually, you, you can't be redeemed because you haven't done all of the healing work yet. We're
Hmm.
just watching someone. It's like an alcoholic who 6 months in is like, I can fix you. And it's like, you can't even fix yourself
Yeah.
yet. Like, you have so much more work to do.
Ugh, it's just a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
So then the next day, she calls Steele and he agrees to take them to Core Point. And he's like, "You're going to have to go to a station. That's where we're going to go." And originally, Nasun was like talking with Shafa, like, "How will we get there? By boat or whatever?" And they're like, "No, I can't do that." And Steele kind of implies that he could take them through the ground. And
Hmm.
Nasun is very leery of that because she's like, he would just conveniently leave Shafa behind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to do this because I know that he's more interested in me and we'll end up there and it'll just be me. And then I'll be screwed because I won't have Shafa,
I
who
mean,
is my
that's not the
safety.
worst thing. Yeah, I get why she wants him, but
He-
also,
yeah. And so Steele tells them that they're going to a station and that a price must be paid to use this power. And Nasun's like, the silver. And they're they're all kind of like, oh, it's interesting that you refer to it as the silver. And then he instructs them where they should go and says that he thought it would be her mother who would be the one to do this. And she's like, wait, what? And he reveals that Asun joined another comm and then Nasun's like, well, Essun's not going to get to have the obelisk gate, and she's not going to be able to find me either. And Steele says, I really underestimated you, Nasun.
what
And
every person
then
wants
they
to
leave.
hear when they have mommy issues. I thought it would be
Oh,
your mom. I
oh,
really
oh,
underestimated you.
ugh, just Steele is icky too.
Oh, yeah.
So then we switch over to Sil Anagist 4, and Hoa shares that tuners are supposed to weave energies together using the plutonic engine, and that the goal is geo geoarcanity, which is
Ugh.
an infinite efficiency of energy, which will lead to no more strife in the world, which is a huge thing. So it's interesting that we're talking about the beginning of all of this and how the initial goal was to end strife throughout the world. And so the people are working together occasionally and with Kalenli, and they don't quite understand her. And she says that she has this context and she's more experienced and she wants to help them understand themselves more because they're tools and she can help them understand how they're made to be used. And they end up being given this like really suspicious tuning mission. And the people want to send out several groups for this mission. And then they end up having to be dressed and have their faces painted and everything to try and make them look more like the people that they're going to be out and about with. And Kalenli shows up and she's like, you guys look ridiculous. They're going to know who you are right away. We need to wash this off. And she's like laughing at them, even though they're fearful. And when Hoa's like questioning, like, why are you laughing at the fear of others? And she's like, I I don't know, I'm just laughing. It's hilarious to me. And he's like, well, people would like you more if you didn't do that kind of thing. And she's like, I don't care about being liked. And they're afraid because you guys exist. And we can't do
Hmm.
anything to earn their approval except stop existing. And
Hmm.
Hoa realizes that some of the other tuners were not flawed as he previously thought and were decommissioned from their group for no reason. And
Hmm.
then Kalenli asks Hoa if he knows about the word legacy and what it means.
Oh.
And then they end up following her out into the world to complete this mission. And so then we switch back over to chapter 5, which is our POV. And as we suspected, we are attacked at dawn and everyone's ready. And it's actually a really small group. And Yika ends up kind of just like yelling out and like trying to talk to the attackers and is like, "Hey, we don't have to fight. It can be cool." But
Yep.
there's these raiders that come forth and uh we have to fight our urge to attack and just like instead of just like wiping them all out, we're like, okay, we'll hide. And
Hmm.
because we know that Yika wants us to play nice, we
Yeah.
don't want to get on her bad side. And so we find out this small group, which is led by an origin, and we realize that this origin is fulcrum trained, and we realize it's Mashish, who
Mhm.
we went to school with. And
Yes.
Mashish is now a six ringer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like super flattered when we remember his real name. And he also
Yes.
remembers that our name was Demaya.
Yes.
And he's like, look, I'm really sorry for all that crack stuff. And he's like, here, I ended up going and looking for her at one point, and I checked some node stations. She wasn't there. And I really wanted to be in a situation where I could like free them all. And
Yes.
it was devastating. And Essun's like, yeah, I also have thought about like going to node stations and just like freeing them or killing them, ending their suffering there.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mashish and Essun are kind of and us, we're kind of talking, and we are sharing that we basically have a calm where origins are welcome. Like people aren't killed for who they are. And Mashish is like, for what price? And we realize, oh, we actually do have to pay a price of being used as a weapon. We
Yep.
are well used. And Mashish is like, I also have an agreement with my people
Mm-hmm.
in my group, and it is that I keep them safe and they help me out and I won't kill them.
Yep.
And so we're like, well, here's the deal. Why don't you join our comm? And all the people in his group are like, no comm is going to take us. Like, they don't want us. Our origin is starting to die. He's got a terrible cough and he's just not doing well. Nobody wants any of us. And so we're like, here, we'll put in a good word with the head woman. We know her. And we also tell Mashish that actually we were the ones that set off the obelisk gate, like that weird thing that you saw over Renanis, over Christian. That was us. Whoops.
Oopsie
And
daisy.
we're headed for Renanis. And then we start heading back to our group and we're like, we'll share the good parts of the story if you want, which I kind of think is a fun way to end this section.
Yeah, it was a beautiful cut for a third of the way through reading the pages.
Yes.
So, with that, I can't wait to read more. What a great breakdown. Thank you so much for reminding me what I read about.
It's a wild ride.
It is a wild, and so much happens like Mekshish coming back into the picture,
Mhm.
apologizing, having his own like it's such a beautiful way to like intercut and intersperse this narrative that's
Things are
taking
really
place.
become like really coming full circle for Esun, and I think it's just a really interesting way to tell this story as a story.
Yeah.
And I just love how it's all becoming like the characters are telling stories to one another. We're being told the story. There's stories within stories, and how the importance of storytelling shaping
Yeah.
people is like permeating throughout this entire series.
Love to see it. Well, join us next week as we cover chapters 6 through 10 of The Stone Sky. And while you're at it, if you could follow us on all the social platforms in which we are on, or check out our reading lists at owwrpod.com. We're at Our Pod, OWWR Pod, everywhere you can find us. And please, if you would be so kind, tell a friend to listen to us or rate, review,
Yes.
and subscribe. It
Sharing
all
really
helps.
helps.
We really appreciate you all, and we have some great
And
things
thanks for
coming up
listening
this year.
today.
Of course. And join us next week. Bye.
Bye.